Yes, NM cable can be stapled to the bottom of TJI in a crawl space. Drilling holes is not mandatory for NM cable installations in this scenario. However, it is crucial to utilize staples specifically designed for NM cable. These staples are manufactured with a rounded shape to prevent damage to the cable's insulation during installation. Here are some helpful tips for stapling NM cable to TJI to ensure secure and code-compliant installation. Firstly, space the staples no more than 4 feet apart along the run of the cable. This spacing helps to provide adequate support and prevents the cable from sagging or becoming damaged over time. Secondly, drive the staples into the TJI at a slight angle. This angled approach ensures that the cable is held securely against the bottom of the TJI, minimizing movement and reducing the risk of the cable becoming dislodged. Thirdly, exercise caution to avoid driving the staples too far into the TJI. Overdriving the staples can compromise the cable's insulation, potentially leading to electrical hazards or future issues. There is an exception to the stapling requirement. Staples are not necessary if the NM cable is run through holes that are bored through the TJI. However, if choosing this method, it is essential to ensure that the holes are smooth and free of burrs. Burrs or rough edges can damage the cable's insulation as it is pulled through the hole, creating a potential safety hazard. It is important to be aware of National Electrical Code, or NEC, requirements related to supporting and securing NM cable. The NEC provides guidelines on the proper methods for installing electrical cables to ensure safety and prevent damage. Specific NEC sections outline the acceptable methods for supporting NM cable, including stapling and running through bored holes. The NEC also specifies requirements for the type of staples that must be used for NM cable installations. The NEC mandates the staples used for NM cable be designed to avoid damage to the cable's insulation. This requirement is in place to prevent electrical shorts and other hazards that can result from damaged wiring. When installing NM cable in a crawl space, it is essential to consider the environment and potential exposure to moisture or physical damage. Crawl spaces are often damp or humid environments which can degrade the insulation of electrical cables over time. In such cases, it may be necessary to use additional protective measures such as installing the cable in conduit or using moisture-resistant cable types. It is also crucial to ensure that the NM cable is protected from physical damage in the crawl space. This can be achieved by running the cable along the TJI, where it is less likely to be stepped on or damaged by other objects. Additionally, it is important to avoid running the cable in areas where it may be exposed to excessive heat or chemicals. When working with electrical wiring, it is always recommended to consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector. These professionals can provide guidance on local electrical codes and best practices for safer and compliant installations. They can also help to identify potential hazards and ensure that the wiring is installed correctly. The type of NM cable being used can also impact the installation requirements. NM cable is available in various sizes and configurations, each with its own specific capacity and voltage rating. It is essential to select the appropriate NM cable for the intended application and to follow the manufacturer's instructions for installation. For example, larger gauge NM cable may require different stapling or support methods than smaller gauge cable. Additionally, some NM cable types are specifically designed for use in wet or damp locations and may be required in certain crawl space environments. The spacing of staples for NM cable is crucial for ensuring proper support and preventing damage to the cable. While the general guideline is to space staples no more than 4 feet apart, there may be situations where closer spacing is required. For example, if the cable is running horizontally along a TJI, closer spacing may be necessary to prevent sagging. Similarly, if the cable is subject to vibration or movement, closer spacing can help to maintain a secure connection. It is also important to consider the type of TJI being used when stapling NM cable. TJI are engineered wood products that are commonly used in residential and commercial construction. They are available in various sizes and configurations, each with its own load-bearing capacity and structural characteristics. When stapling NM cable to TJI, it is essential to ensure that the staples are not placed in areas that could compromise the structural integrity of the TJI. For example, avoid stapling near the edges of the TJI or in areas where there are pre-existing holes or notches. When boring holes through TJI for an M cable, it is crucial to follow the manufacturer's guidelines and local building codes. TJI manufacturers typically provide specific recommendations for hole placement and size to ensure that the structural integrity of the TJI is maintained. In general, holes should be located away from the edges of the TJI and should not be too large in diameter. It is also important to ensure that the holes are smooth and free of burrs, as this can damage the cable's insulation. Proper grounding is essential for electrical safety. When installing an M cable in a crawl space, it is crucial to ensure that the grounding system is properly installed and connected. The grounding system provides a path for fault current to flow back to the source, tripping the circuit breaker and preventing electrical shock. An M cable typically includes a grounding conductor, which must be properly connected to the grounding system at the electrical panel and at each outlet or device. Electrical boxes are used to enclose electrical connections and protect them from damage. When installing an M cable in a crawl space, it is essential to use appropriate electrical boxes for all connections. The electrical boxes should be securely mounted to the TJI or other structural members and should be properly grounded. The NM cable should be securely connected to the electrical box using cable clamps or connectors. Cable clamps and connectors are used to secure NM cable to electrical boxes and prevent it from being pulled out or damaged. When installing an M cable in a crawl space, it is essential to use cable clamps or connectors that are specifically designed for NM cable. These devices provide a secure connection and prevent the cable from being damaged by sharp edges or rough surfaces. Overfilling electrical boxes can create a fire hazard and make it difficult to work on the wiring in the future. When installing an M cable in a crawl space, it is essential to avoid overfilling electrical boxes with too many wires or devices. The NEC specifies the maximum number of wires and devices that can be installed in an electrical box based on its size and volume. It is important to follow these guidelines to ensure that the wiring is safe and accessible. When working in a crawl space, it is essential to take precautions to protect yourself from hazards. Crawl spaces can be damp, dirty, and infested with insects or rodents. It is important to wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as gloves, eye protection, and a respirator, to protect yourself from these hazards. It is also important to be aware of potential electrical hazards and to take steps to avoid them. Always turn off the power to the circuit before working on any electrical wiring. When installing an M cable in a crawl space, it is important to follow all applicable building codes and regulations. Building codes are designed to ensure the safety and quality of construction and to protect the public from hazards. It is important to be familiar with the local building codes and to follow them carefully when installing electrical wiring. Electrical inspections are conducted by qualified electrical inspectors to ensure that electrical installations are safe and compliant with building codes. When installing an M cable in a crawl space, it is important to schedule an electrical inspection to ensure that the wiring is installed correctly and safely. The electrical inspector will review the installation and identify any potential hazards or code violations. If any issues are found, they must be corrected before the installation can be approved. The long-term durability of an M cable installations in crawl spaces can be affected by several factors, including moisture, temperature, and physical damage. To ensure the long-term reliability of the wiring, it is important to take steps to protect the cable from these factors. This can include using moisture-resistant cable types, installing the cable and conduit, and providing adequate ventilation in the crawl space. Regular maintenance of electrical wiring in crawl spaces is essential for ensuring its continued safety and reliability. This can include inspecting the wiring for damage, checking the connections for tightness, and testing the grounding system. Any issues that are found should be addressed promptly to prevent further damage or hazards. The presence of rodents or insects in a crawl space can pose a threat to an M cable installations. Rodents can chew on the cable's insulation, causing electrical shorts and other hazards. Insects can also damage the cable's insulation or create nests that can interfere with the wiring. To protect the wiring from these pests, it is important to take steps to control their populations in the crawl space. This can include sealing any openings in the foundation, installing traps, and using pest control products. The use of improper stapling techniques can damage NM cable and create a safety hazard. It is important to use staples that are specifically designed for NM cable and to avoid overdriving the staples into the TJI. Overdriving the staples can compress the cable's insulation, creating a potential point of failure. The use of damaged or corroded electrical boxes or fittings can compromise the safety of an NM cable installation. It is important to inspect all electrical boxes and fittings for damage or corrosion before installing them. Any damaged or corroded components should be replaced with new ones. The improper routing of NM cable can create a tripping hazard or expose the cable to physical damage. It is important to route the cable in a way that minimizes the risk of these hazards. This can include running the cable along the TJI or through bored holes and avoiding areas where it may be stepped on or damaged by other objects. The failure to properly support NM cable can cause it to sag or become damaged over time. It is important to support the cable at regular intervals using staples or other approved methods. The support should be sufficient to prevent the cable from sagging or moving excessively. The use of undersized NM cable can create a fire hazard. It is important to select the appropriate size of NM cable for the intended application. The size of the cable should be based on the ampacity of the circuit and the length of the run. The use of damaged or deteriorated NM cable can create a safety hazard. It is important to inspect the cable for damage or deterioration before installing it. Any damaged or deteriorated cable should be replaced with new cable. The installation of NM cable in areas where it is exposed to excessive heat or moisture can shorten its lifespan and create a safety hazard. It is important to avoid running the cable in these areas. If it is necessary to run the cable in a hot or damp area, it should be protected with conduit or other approved methods. The failure to properly ground the electrical system can create a serious safety hazard. It is important to ensure that the grounding system is properly installed and connected. The grounding system provides a path for fault current to flow back to the source, tripping the circuit breaker and preventing electrical shock. The failure to properly bond metal electrical boxes and equipment can create a shock hazard. It is important to bond all metal electrical boxes and equipment together using a grounding conductor. This ensures that all metal parts are at the same electrical potential, reducing the risk of shock. The use of extension cords as a substitute for permanent wiring is a fire hazard and is not permitted by the NEC. Extension cords are designed for temporary use only and should not be used as a substitute for permanent wiring. If permanent wiring is needed, it should be installed by a qualified electrician. The splicing of NM cable outside of an electrical box is a fire hazard and is not permitted by the NEC. All splices must be made inside an approved electrical box. The electrical box provides protection for the splice and prevents it from becoming a fire hazard. The use of wire nuts that are not properly sized or installed can create a loose connection, which can lead to a fire hazard. It is important to use wire nuts that are properly sized for the wires being connected and to install them correctly. The wire nut should be twisted tightly to ensure a secure connection. The overloading of electrical circuits can create a fire hazard. It is important to avoid overloading electrical circuits. The ampacity of the circuit should not be exceeded. The use of multi-wire branch circuits can save on wiring costs, but they must be installed correctly. Multi-wire branch circuits share a neutral conductor. It is important to ensure that the neutral conductor is properly sized and connected to prevent overloading. Arc fault circuit interrupters, RF are designed to protect against fires caused by arc faults. A size should be installed in all branch circuits that serve bedrooms, living rooms, and other areas where people may be sleeping or spending a lot of time. Ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs, are designed to protect against electrical shock. GFCIs should be installed in all wet or damp locations such as bathrooms, kitchens, and outdoors. Surge protectors are designed to protect electronic equipment from damage caused by power surges. Surge protectors should be installed on all circuits that serve sensitive electronic equipment, such as computers, televisions, and stereos. Smoke detectors are designed to alert people to the presence of smoke, which can indicate a fire. Smoke detectors should be installed in all bedrooms, hallways, and on every level of a home. Carbon monoxide detectors are designed to alert people to the presence of carbon monoxide, a deadly gas. Carbon monoxide detectors should be installed in all homes that have fuel-burning appliances, such as furnaces, water heaters, and fireplaces. The NEC is updated every 3 years. It is important to stay up to date on the latest changes to the NEC to ensure that electrical installations are safe and compliant. Local building codes may have additional requirements that are not covered by the NEC. It is important to be familiar with the local building codes and to follow them carefully when installing electrical wiring.